Greetings Far Cry fans, and welcome to yet another deep dive into the wonderful world of Far Cry 6. I'm Eurogamer's Ian Higton, and in this video I'll be attempting to answer 7 of the biggest questions that you lot have about Far Cry 6. So if you've been wondering about things like the map editor, where Far Cry 6 appears in the Far Cry timeline, and even whether or not we'll see the return of Hurk in the game, well, this video is for you. Okay, so one of the biggest questions most people have about Far Cry 6 is when exactly is it set, and how, considering the expiration date on Danny's ID here is 2021, does it fit in with the rather explosive climax of Far Cry 5? If you weren't aware, the Resist ending of Far Cry 5, which is thought to be the canon ending of the game, sees a nuclear strike obliterate America in 2018. This kickstarts a total nuclear war, and in the following 24 hours, most of the planet and human civilization itself is wiped out, leading to the events of Far Cry New Dawn 17 years later. So how then does Far Cry 6's Yara even exist, if most of the planet has been vaporised? Well, there are a few fan theories out there that have attempted to answer this question, but the most likely solutions seem to come from one of Far Cry New Dawn's expedition missions, named Government Plane Wreck. In this mission, you find the remains of the Paladin plane from Splinter Cell Blacklist. In there, you'll find a bunch of lore notes from Sam Fisher himself, which reference the collapse, and then in the main area of the plane, you'll find this monitor which warns of an imminent nuclear threat and shows where on American soil those incoming nukes will hit. But, as you can see here, while America is completely flattened during the first strike, the island of Cuba, the inspiration for the fictional island of Yara, is completely untouched. So, while the rest of the world burned, in this theory, the isolated island of Yara escaped the bombs and life there went on in relative normality. Which kind of makes sense, especially if you think that the official marketing for the game described Yara as a tropical paradise frozen in time. But as nicely as all of those pieces fit together, it turns out that that theory isn't true at all, because, according to Far Cry 6's narrative director Navid Harveri, the events of Far Cry 5 actually take place in an alternate timeline to those of Far Cry 6. In a recent AMA, Navid said, "We tried to approach this with the idea that each Far Cry has its own stories and world. While there are some loose connections between the games, we wanted to focus on the story of Yara and its revolution set in the present day, with Danny and Libertad fighting against Anton's regime." So, while there are a couple of loose connections to previous events in the series, which I'll go into a bit more detail on later, and while some of the events in Far Cry 5 probably did happen in the Far Cry 6 universe and will probably be referenced, it's almost certain that, in this instance of the timeline at least, the collapse never actually happened. Oh my god, did Far Cry 6 just pull an "it was all a dream" on us? So the next question then would surely be, in what way does Far Cry 6 connect to 5 and, in turn, to the rest of the Far Cry games? Well, that's a big question, and one that I suspect we will find many more answers to once the game releases, but we have already seen some connections in some of Far Cry 6's promotional materials, and pretty much all of them refer to returning characters from past games. In my recent 101 Details We Spotted in Far Cry 6 video, not only did we see a vast bobblehead sat upon the dashboard of one of Yara's classic cars, but in a way more concrete link to previous games, we also saw a dog tag trinket hanging from a gun that used to belong to dodgy CIA agent Willis Huntley. Now, not only does this dog tag prove that Huntley exists in the Far Cry 6 universe, but it also suggests that maybe at some point we'll meet him and maybe even finally get to kill him, with the unlockable dog tag being a reward for doing so. Obviously, that's a bit of guesswork on my part, but I can't be the only one itching to finally give Huntley some much-needed payback.
Sorry, kid, but like I told you, every patriot I know is a son of a bitch!
The other character connections come in the form of tie-in graphic novels published by Dark Horse Comics. This 3-issue collection sees Far Cry 6's big bad, Anton Castillo, teach his son Diego a series of lessons in leadership based on his experiences meeting the villains from Far Cry's 3, 4 and 5. Currently, only one issue has been released, and this centres around Vas Montenegro from Far Cry 3, whose inner struggles allow Anton a way to teach Diego the importance of harnessing the power of chaos. The second issue, which releases this month, sees Anton teach Diego about the value of family through the fateful demise of Pagan Min from Far Cry 4. And then in July, we'll be able to see exactly how Far Cry 5 connects to Far Cry 6 when the third and final issue comes out, and we see Anton use Joseph Seed as an example of how to embrace and conquer pain rather than to escape it. Now, based on that last answer, I can almost hear you all shouting the next question at me through your monitors, and that question would be, but Ian, what about Hurk? You've not mentioned Hurk. Where's Hurk?
Fire in the hole!
Vio con Dios, little buddy.
Well, love him or hate him, Hurk has been a regular feature in every Far Cry game since Far Cry 3, except for Blood Dragon, and he's even appeared as a prehistoric version of himself in the spin-off game Far Cry Primal.
To Urky Patash! To Urky Patash!
But the question is Hurk in Far Cry 6? Well, the answer to that, I'm afraid, is no. In a recently deleted tweet, Dylan Taylor, Hurk's voice actor, replied to a fan who asked this very question, and Dylan replied with, "No one has been in touch with me, and they may have kicked Hurk to the curb after all these years." Then, in this not yet deleted tweet, Dylan says that it would seem that Hurk isn't in Far Cry 6 because his phone ain't rung, brah brah. The final nail in Hurk's sweat-stained coffin, though, came during the recent AMA, when one of the developers in the chat posted that the manifestations of Hurk, including Urki, are legends in Far Cry. However, in the context of Yara, we wanted to mainly spotlight characters from the region, so Hurk will be on other adventures during the time of Far Cry 6. So, while Hurk is officially out of Far Cry 6, he ain't dead yet, and there is still a chance that he may return to the series in future installments. Hell, the fact that Dylan deleted that first tweet might even mean that Ubisoft got in touch with him and offered him a spot on some future Far Cry 6 DLC. Although, it could also mean that they got in touch specifically to bollock him for posting that tweet, and that his agent made him take it down. Either way, the monkey god will be weeping for Yara, because for now at least, we're definitely saying Via con Dios, little buddy, to Hurk in Far Cry 6. From characters we know to characters we don't know next, because another thing a lot of people want to know is, whom exactly will we be fighting? Obviously, we know that we'll be fighting Anton Castillo and his army of true Yarans, but what about his lieutenants, who are Far Cry 6's equivalent to the Seed family? Well, that one is still slightly unknown at the moment, but we did get some extra clues in the recent worldwide gameplay reveal, which do point towards the identities of a couple of Anton's inner circle. To find out who they are, first we need to revisit this shot from my 101 Details video. Here we can see graffiti of Anton acting like a puppet master to 5 different characters. 3 of them so far have featured or have been mentioned in previous trailers or reveals, and 2, as far as I know, still remain a mystery. Let's go left to right, starting with the only woman in the group. What follows is speculation, but the only time we've heard a woman's name in regards to Anton so far is in this clip where Danny mentions someone called Maria.
How you think El Presidente wanted Maria's new face?
Okay, go through.
So, if this is Maria, what is her second name and what is her role in Castillo's circle? Well, during the 30-minute countdown to the Far Cry 6 gameplay reveal, many shots of Yara were shown, and in one of them, we see this postcard that reads, "I write this and hope that this ship survives Benitez. I hope her soldados turn their eyes away from the sea for as long as it takes to flee Yara." Could Maria's full name then be Maria Benitez? Perhaps she's in charge of Castillo's navy, hence why the author of the postcard fears for her escape by sea. During this shot of a pile of books from the countdown, we also get a glimpse of what is potentially another shot of this character. The eyebrows and eyes look quite similar, and written at the bottom of this photo is the word Marquesa, which, according to Wikipedia, is a Spanish aristocratic title. So this could explain her lofty position within Castillo's cruelty club. Next up is this fella. Now, I've not been able to spot him in any of the gameplay we've seen so far, so I've got no idea about him, but this chap in the centre here, he appears in this shot piloting a rather extravagant helicopter that's shooting at Danny. There's no clue as to this flyboy's name yet, but the fact that he's riding a massive chopper makes me think that he's probably the boss man for Castillo's Air Force. We get a great close-up look at this next character from the footage in my 101 Details video, in this scene where Castillo is teaching Diego about what it means to be a true Yaran. Again, there's no name yet for this cowboy-looking mofo, but as he's present in a dank, dark cell mid-interrogation, I'm going to hazard a guess that he's maybe in charge of Yara's jails. His fancy hat does look like a kind of American sheriff's hat, so I'd put money on the fact that he's definitely got something to do with Yara's lawmaking. Finally, this bespectacled being here is also pretty much anonymous at the moment. If his glasses are a character design clue as to his occupation, then maybe he's like in charge of Castillo's communications network or tech or something. Or maybe he's a scary science man doing experiments on captured Libertad. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine at this point, but at least we know that there's likely to be 5 sub-bosses to finish off before we get to Castillo himself. Okay, so it's pretty clear right now that Far Cry 6 has a super detailed story mode with a very large cast of characters, but up until now, Far Cry 6's development team has been pretty quiet about the multiplayer side of things. So the next most asked question is definitely, will Far Cry 6 have multiplayer? The answer to this came in the form of another statement in the recent AMA, which stated that the full game is playable in co-op with the tether system that you experienced in Far Cry 5 and New Dawn. That's great news for co-op lovers, sure, but what then about the other forms of multiplayer, you may be asking? Well, really, the answer to that falls into this next question, which is, will Far Cry 6 have a map editor? This is a massive question, as the Far Cry games are famous for including map-making tools. They've been doing it ever since Far Cry Instincts, and fans of the series are always excited for its inclusion. But when asked this question in the Reddit AMA, the answer was very disappointing. No, arcade will not be coming back. Removing this mode from our plan was a difficult decision, but it allowed us to focus our efforts on the main campaign, transporting players into the heart of a modern-day guerrilla revolution. If you're not aware, Far Cry Arcade was Far Cry 5's rebranding of the map editor into a community-focused virtual arcade that let you make, share, and play custom Far Cry 5 maps. That means, with the removal of Far Cry Arcade, we're not only losing the traditional map editor tool, but also any hint of a PvP multiplayer mode too. This is incredibly disheartening news for people like me who fell in love with the series thanks to its custom map tools, but in all honesty, I think we've all seen it coming for ages now. Far Cry's map-making tools are excellent, but for some reason the developers of the series have been ignoring requests from the hardcore map-making community in regards to how these maps are shared and played for ages now, and as such, each iteration of multiplayer since Far Cry 2 seems to have gotten worse rather than better. Alright, well, I can't rightly end this video on a sad note, so let's go to the final most asked question about Far Cry 6 that I've seen, and that is, will wingsuits still be in the game? Well, although we've not seen any footage of the wingsuits yet, the answer to that question in the AMA was a nice big yes, followed by another yes of comparable size to the question of whether or not Far Cry 6 would see the return of the grappling hook. So that means we'll potentially be able to grapple our way right up the exterior of Castillo's tower here and wingsuit our way off it right across the city of Esperanza. Which will be lovely, but not as good as having a map editor, of course. Oh god, no, I better not get started on that again. I'll be ranting on for ages otherwise. Okay, that's me done. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any further questions about Far Cry 6 that you need answering, perhaps I'll be able to do that for you in a future video. So ask away in the comments below, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and please do subscribe to this channel for loads more Far Cry 6 coverage coming up very, very soon. Goodbye and good liberating.
I am nothing like you.
Vibrate like a Nokia.